Hi, and welcome back to another video about JavaScript and 3D animation. Today, we're going to make something cool. We're going to make this thing right cha. Bunch of pretty points spiraling around, and yeah, it's just a pretty thing that we're going to make. Here's how we start. Let's get into it. I'm importing Three.js. Later, I'll import it from a previous version to get it to work with some of the features I want to use in this video. I'm setting up the scene to fit the size of the window, and I'm creating a icosahedron, giving it a basic material and putting that into a mesh and adding it to the scene. Then I'm calling this animate function over and over again so that it moves around in a neat way. Lastly, there's this window resize function, which is called each time I change the width or the height of the browser window so that the scene dynamically updates. Well, it's kind of hard to get that one over there. Grab it from up here. Isn't that nice? Okay. So, to get from here to here, we're going to go step by step. The first thing we'll do is add the points, and then we'll assign a color to each one of those points. Then what? Then we'll add some controls so that we can kind of orbit around in the scene. Whoa, isn't that cool too? Using the mouse, we'll be able to move the camera around inside the scene. We'll add some fog. In Three.js, you can make distant objects appear to be faded, and that's called fog, even though it's not foggy. It'll be a black fog is what it'll be. And then we'll add the effect that makes this kind of glowy, and we'll add an effect to give each of those points a trail, a tail as it moves around. It leaves an after image. In fact, I think that's the name of the effect that we'll use. It's called after image. All right, but let's get started. This scene isn't building itself. First thing we want to do is add the points. I'm going to fade that geometry into the background a little bit. Change the color to a very, very light gray. You may not even be able to see it in this video. Let's make it a little bit dark, brighter. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and create const geo new dot buffer geometry. Okay, that's going to be our points, the geometry for our points. The geo, I'm going to set attribute. I don't know why I don't get code completion for this. Position, that'll be the position of each point. And that is going to be the icosahedron's vertices. So we're going to call that ball geo dot attribute dot position. And when you set an attribute on a buffer geometry, what it wants is what's called a float32 buffer attribute. It looks like this. The word I just said is this: float32 buffer attribute. As it happens, this ball geo attribute's position is already a float32 attribute. When we set the color, we'll have to convert it to that buffer32 attribute. Float 30. Yeah, whatever I just said. Let's do. This is the material for this points is going to be a new 3 points material. Let's give it a color of red or yellow. And vertex colors. What did I just? I hit enter in. false. Later we'll set that to true, but for the time being that's false. If I save it, nothing happens yet. I haven't done anything with the stuff. Const points equals new 3.points. And we'll pass in that geo and the mat. And we'll add points. Boom. Look at that. There's our points. Oh, I forgot to add a size attribute. Size 1.0. It's not going to look any different. I want that to rotate with the icosahedron wireframe. So I'm just going to copy this mesh rotation and the points that same rotation. Like that. I'm drinking hot cocoa. It's actually almond milk, dark chocolate. What better to drink on a cold winter day? Next thing we want to do is add the color. Duplicate this and say color, and this will be a new 3.float to attribute, and I'll pass in the colors array that I haven't created yet, and I need to tell it how many properties. How do you say it? The length of the vector, I guess you would call it. In this case, there's RGB. That's 3. So I'm going to leave that commented out for the moment, so if I save it, it doesn't break it. What I need to do now is to create an array, const colors equals a new array, and let's create a color too, and we'll call that a new 3.color. Plain old bland non-existent color, and think about this. Const num vertices is equal to the ball geo dot attributes dot position dot count. Okay. This attribute has a property count, which is the number of vectors in that array. I'm not going to explain this very well, but suffice it to say that position has the x, y, z. That position array has the x, y, z positions of all the points, the vertices on that icosahedron, and this is a way to get the number of vertices. Now I want to iterate over that for let I 0 while I plus I want to loop over the number of vertices, create a new color for each one, push it into the colors array, and then use that for the color property. In my points. So let's say color dot set HSL. That stands for set hue, saturation, and lightness. To 1.0, which is red, 1.0, which is fully saturated, 0.5, which is half bright. Okay, and then colors dot push R G B. Now, if I uncomment this, nothing's going to happen. But if I change this to vertex colors equals true, now we should see red point. But that's boring. What if we said math.random for the hue? And now we get, if I save this, interesting. Seeing the full spectrum. What if I increase the number of points? Well, I see only red. Why? It's really interesting. It's not what I expected. Color.r, color.g. I'm expecting to see the full spectrum of colors, but I'm only seeing red, green, and yellow. I think I'm doing something wrong. Maybe that's, I guess that was it. When I remove the color attribute from the points material, now I'm seeing a full spectrum of colors. Who knew? I'm going to decrease the size of those a little bit. 5. Now they're a little bit smaller dots. I don't think we need that. Oh, I broke it. You can't see this, but the console just exploded with a bunch of errors because I'm still trying to rotate this mesh even though I just commented it out. Now we're just seeing the point. Let's add that kind of depth effect by adding fog scene.fog new 3.2, and we'll say black and 0.05. Can't even tell it's there. It's because I said scene.4. Okay, do you see how the points in the distance are faded out? And if I crank this up to like 9.5, look how they almost disappear in the background. Leave it at 5.5. Slightly darker. I want to import the orbit controls. Import so that I can move. I can use my mouse to move the camera around from JSM. Great. There's 3 lines to instantiate them that I don't bother to remember because I just copy and paste them in. Need them. This case is screen. Instantiating the controls, passing in the camera and the DOM element, the canvas, setting the target to the center and update. Now I can use my mouse to kind of move around, zoom in and out. Isn't that fun? Cool. We have a few more things to do. We've added color. Oh, I want to change that color. We can set the color to, let's say, I want a color like yellow at the top of the, sorry, let's start from the left side. Yellow on the left side and purple on the right side, and kind of gradually shift hue as you go across. Let X, just let X. And here I'll say X is equal to this I times 3, because there's an XYZ value for each vertex. I want X to be the first in each one of those tuplets, and I'm just going to pass that here, X. And nothing happens. I think I broke it. Oh, no, I didn't break it. They're just all black. Let's see. Baldio array. That's right. Like that. Did you see that? So let's see if I put X in here again. It kind of looks random still. In fact, I'm gonna comment out this fog for a second. The color is a little more clear. And if I cut that X value by 1/10, it's kind of looking kind of rainbowy now. Cut it a quarter again. Okay, now the color of the points shifts from yellow to purple as you go from one side to the other side of the object. If I wanted to, say, make it from top down, and I'm just going to change the rotation so it only rotates on the y-axis right now. Do you see? If I add 1, I'll get the y of each one of these. And now you see yellow on top, which is the lesser value for hue, like let's say 0.2 or 0.3, down to purple on the bottom. Actually, I think it's going the other way, isn't it? I could say 1 minus to invert it, so that purple will be on top. I hope that makes sense. I'm not explaining this, but play around with the values to kind of to get the effect you want. I'm gonna leave it on that. For Y, oh, sorry about that. Here we go, and then turn on that rotation again. There, we've got colors now. Let's add some effects. Whoa, I'm gonna add the fog back. Also, just play around with the number of vertices. Crank that up, way up. You can go bonkers with it. Isn't that cool looking? I'm gonna drop it down to 1 again. I think that's the number I want. I don't really need this ball anymore, the vertices. So I'm just gonna get rid of it, keep my code clean. I've got a couple more things to do before we wrap up. This is already kind of cool, but let's add some effects. To do that, I'm going to pull in this older version of Three.js. Okay, and I'm going to paste in the effects imports. These are them. I'm pulling in the effects composer. That'll be the first thing we set up, and my render pass, that'll be the second. And then I'll add a bloom pass to give it a kind of glowy look, and that after image thing to get the trails. Let's start with setting up all right here. First thing is the render scene, and that's going to be a new render pass, and I'm going to pass in the scene and the camera. I'm going to guess what this does. I think this renders the scene to an off-screen canvas, and then you can compose that back in. I'm looking at my stuff over here. I'm going to create const pose equals new effect composer. Do I pass it anything? Oh yeah, the renderer. Okay, so I've got this render scene, and I'll say composer dot add pass the render scene. Whoops, render. Nothing has changed because all I'm doing is setting up our effects composer and adding that render path. So instead of renderer.render, I'm going to say composer.render, and that doesn't change anything. That's because all I'm doing is rendering in a different way the same thing. Where this gets interesting is when I try the bloom pass, when I add the bloom pass. Let's do that now. So bloom pass equals, I'm just going to forgive me for just pasting the Unreal bloom pass. You pass in the resolution and then strength, radius, and threshold. Resolution, strength, radius, and threshold. I'm going to add a pass, the bloom pass. And now, if I save that, you get this wonderful glowy effect. You can blow out the strength to 100, really, really hideous looking, or drop it back down to some value. Play with the radius and the threshold as well. Wow, that's kind of cool. Also bizarre. So I'm going to leave it where I want it for now. One more pass we're going to add is a const after glow. Is that what we're calling it? After glow? No, rail? What do we call it? After image. It's kind of like, you know, an effect that you would see on your eyes after image path. New your image. I don't think we give this anything, but if we want to modify it, like if I just add that now, I don't think it looks very good yet. Oh, it does. It looks good right out of the box. I haven't changed anything, and we're already getting that glowy effect. Oh, that's so cool. However, just reading through the Three.js docs, highly recommend you go check that out. There's the Unreal Bloom Pass docs. You can mess around with some of these qualities. I'm going to give it a slightly longer tail. You can give it a super long tail. So it's as if the tails never fade away. That's too much. Like that's a pretty good length. That's even. So there you have it. We're done. We went from a icosahedron wireframe to a bunch of glowy points spinning around, and you can configure these points however you want. I thought the distribution of the icosahedron was really nice. In fact, let's make these points a little bit smaller. Change the point size on our point material, and let's go even smaller. And let's increase the number of them. Let's double it. Oh, isn't that cool? You could shift the hue just by adding a value like 0.5 plus, and it will get like blues and greens. Oh, isn't that nice? Looks like ice. And yeah, just play around with these values until you see something that you like. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. All right, that's all I got for today. Thanks so much for watching, and check back again soon for more cool stuff.